I tend to feel guilty is when the thing I feel guilty about the most at the moment is the fact that I don't give blood. Give us a cheer if you give blood on a regular basis. Yes. A few could always be marketing. I think it's the marketing that's to blame, because I heard the advert on the radio, and the advert goes like this: would you like to save a life? And I thought, not really bothered. Do I know them? But I've heard that you get a half-hour sit down. Is that right? You get a half-hour sit down? Yeah? And you get a cup of tea, is that right? Oh, biscuit. Did you know about the biscuits? Who said biscuits? Where are you, love? Nice lady there. What kind of biscuits do they have? What's the best biscuit that they have at your place?
Bourbons.
Oh, Bourbons, and somebody in the middle went, yeah. Got a big Bourbon fan in tonight. So, can anybody do... The Bourbon's pretty good. Can anybody do better than a Bourbon at their blood place?
Club biscuits.
Club biscuits. Who said that? Where are you, fella? Hello, fella. Do they have a variety of club biscuits or just the one flavour?
I'll just go for the orange one.
You just go for the orange ones. You're not a hero at all, are you? Just going for the free orange clubs. Excellent. We've got... Are we going to get any better than an orange club? I don't know. What was that? Party rings. Are you 9? Are they fanned out, like on a plate, all fancy? That's what I'd want. Jelly and ice cream as well. That would... Party rings. I haven't had a party ring in years. Can anybody do better than party rings at orange clubs? No, that's it. They've got... No, I'm sorry. I could compete with the lady with the Bourbon, but I'm fucked against the orange clubs. But you see, this is the sort of thing that we need to know, isn't it? This should be in the advert. The advert shouldn't be, would you like to save a life? The advert should be... Do you like sitting down? Would you love sitting down? Do you like cups of tea? I love cups of tea. We've got party rings. Oh, if you've got party rings, why don't we see if you need some fucking bone marrow while we're on? I did a show in Manchester and a lady shouted, at my place, if you pretend you don't feel very well, they give you a sandwich. Prawn mayonnaise. Only a few weeks ago, my fella said to me, he said, your day-to-day is busier than mine. He said, do you want me to go and do a quick food shop? And I said, oh, that would be amazing, thanks very much. I said, I'm only here for a couple of days, so don't get loads in. He said, just give us a list. I said, great. So I made him a list, off he went. When he came back in, he said, I managed to get everything off the list apart from one thing. I said, that's great, thanks very much. I started to unpack the bags, put them in the cupboard. And I said, what was the thing you didn't manage to get? He said, I didn't manage to get you any avocados. I said, oh, that's all right, don't worry about that. He said, so I bought you some pork pies instead. I said, I wish you worked for Tesco Home Delivery. We've run out of celery, so we've given you a Swiss roll. But he said the best thing about them, he said, they're whoops pork pies. I said, I don't know what that means. He said, they're whoops pork pies. He said, they're going to run out. We'll have to eat all 6 of them before we go to bed. Yes. But you know those cookie shops on the high street where you can get the normal-sized cookies, but you can also get the bigger sort of celebration ones? He bought me one of those, celebration one, a few years ago for part of my Christmas present, and it was smashing. I was unexpected. It was great. And I opened the box and I said, this is a great present. This is excellent. He said, oh, I'm glad you like it. It was all iced Merry Christmas, Sarah, with kisses on. He said, I'm glad you like it. He said, there's only one drawback. And I'm looking at a cookie that's bigger than me head, thinking, there's no fucking drawback. He said, there's only one drawback. It only lasts 5 days. I said, it's like you don't know me at all. He said, you didn't let me finish. It only lasts 5 days. And I bought it 4 days ago. He said, stop your fucking chatting and get the kettle on then. So that's not a present, love. That's a challenge. I've never been a rule breaker or a law breaker. If somebody tells me I can't do something, I just don't do it. It's what I've always been like. Like, my sister reminded me recently, she said, remember, we were never allowed space dust. Do you remember space dust? Never allowed it because my mum thought it was drugs. That's what all the bairns are getting into these days. They're all getting hooked. I'm sure she thought it was a gateway drug to dib, dabs and fountains. But my dad said, you've had it now, haven't you? And I went, no. And he went, but you're in your 30s. And I went, but I'm not allowed. But I had quite a girly relationship with my mum when I was little. Like, if she got new makeup or new clothes, she'd always show me. Every single time she bought new perfume, she'd always say, "Do you want to smell of my new perfume?" And I'd go, "Yes, please." And I'd go over to where she was. She'd bend down because I was only little. She'd pull her top to one side and I would inhale. And every single time she'd done a massive fart. She never told me. For years, that's what I thought Chanel No. 5 smelled like. At best, it's Chanel No. 2. But my sister, she likes to buy me little presents every now and again. You know, sort of, she always says, "I saw this and I thought of you." And they're never, you know, they're not big and expensive. They're just daft little things that she's seen. The most recent one was a pill box. "I saw this and I thought of you." And it's a Mr. Man pill box to show children that tablets can be fun. And the Mr. Man of choice is actually Little Miss Late. Finally, somewhere for all of my morning after pills. But we had a chat recently, maybe Mum, she's got a friend who's quite a bit younger than her who's on the contraceptive injection. And I don't like the idea of the contraceptive injection because when I was on the pill, I had a lot of bother with it, so it was quite nice to be able to come off it straight away. With the injection, it's a bit more complicated. It was a very sensible conversation. It was a very female conversation that my dad chose to interject. Put his paper down and he went, "You should never mess with Mother Nature." And my mum went, "Never mess with Mother Nature. You can talk with your metal hips." My dad's a very friendly man. He likes to talk to people. He likes to talk to everybody. He likes to know people's names. He's the sort of person in a shop, he will read all of the name badges. So if we go in a shop, he gets his change off the lid down the till. He goes, "Thanks very much, Jean." We're just glad that he stopped staring at an old lady's tit. We got a train last year from London up to Newcastle. Me, my sister, my mum and dad managed to get a table on the train. Awesome work. And we got really cheap first-class tickets because we booked them when I was about 9. And a lady got on the train and sat across from us on her own. And my dad was instantly sort of itching to talk to her. Strange yet must chat. And they did have a very minor conversation. My dad said something like, "It's not that cold down here, is it?" And the lady said, "No, it's much warmer than it is up north." That was it. That was the extent of the conversation. Yet my dad still saw fit in 10 minutes' time when the woman removed her cardigan to go, "Da-da-da, da-da-da-da." My dad has a mobile phone. He's getting on, he's nearly 70, he's got a mobile phone, and it's mostly for incoming, so me and my sister can text him to see we're all right, or we can ring him if we need him. He's not really bothered about texting out. He finds it a lot of faff, but doesn't really have the patience anymore. So to make his life easier, and fuck knows who taught him how to do this, he set himself a template text, which he sends out regardless of the situation. And the template text says, "Champion, love Dad." Regardless of whether I've won an award or been shitting myself all night, champion, love Dad. I've been trying to think of a question that I could ask him where that would be a really good answer. And the only one I can come up with is, "Dad, what was the name of the Wonder Horse on the telly in the 80s? But it was about this time last year that I was worried about my family. My mum and dad are both retired and both disabled. And I was worried about them sort of thinking before they put the heating on. You know, it was a very cold winter. Sort of thinking, can we afford it before they put the heating on? And I said, "You know what, you've looked after me all these years, including the 2. I moved back in after I got divorced. Never have kids, because I never properly fucking leave. I said, maybe I could start giving you a bit of a hand. Maybe I could start paying your heating bill." Not happy, not happy. Very proud people, my parents. There was a lot of sort of wrestling went on. I mean, verbal. I wanted to have my dad on the floor, popping out hips willy-nilly. And they eventually agreed. They still weren't happy about it, but they agreed it's the most sensible option, started to pay for the heating bill. A month later, I went to visit them. My dad opened the front door, and he was just wearing vest and pants. And I went, "Dad, it's 3 in the afternoon. Why haven't you got any clothes on?" He went, "It's boiling in there." And I heard my sister shout from the kitchen, "We've never even been on holiday anywhere this hot."